Happy Women, bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And we are going to have some fun today because, first of all, happy 4th of July. One thing I love about Katie is she loves this country. I love this country. We want to fight for this country and save it. And I think today is a great day to try to figure out maybe how to, you said it, Katie, fall in love with America all over again, rekindling our love for our country, because sadly, we all get caught up in the day-to-day stuff. A lot of our kids are not learning about civics or why they should love our country, why our country is the greatest one on the planet. And so today's a great day to remind ourselves about all of that, right?
And we've got some great resources to suggest and some great ideas for things that you can do to fall in love with our country again.
I love it. And here's why we need to. This made me actually kind of sad. So in preparation for this podcast, I thought, let's see what kind of polling is out there about people's patriotism. And unfortunately, there was nothing out there for this year, but literally 1 year ago today, Gallup did a poll about patriotism and our country. And I have some of the notes from it in front of me. The share of young adults who say they are extremely proud to be American is a very, very low. It seems that pride in national identity is lowest with those people who are aged 18 to 34. Shows the fracture between young Americans and older Americans because those people who are over 55 seem to have the highest level of patriotism. Whether that's related to what was taught in school or it's generational, it's interesting to note. Gallup says that Americans 55 and older were 3 times more likely to be extremely prideful of their nationality than younger generations. 39% overall of U.S. adults say that they're extremely proud to be American in the most recent poll. That number's sad. That's not any particular age group. Just overall, only 39% say that they're proud to be an American. Only 18% of those 18 to 34 say the same, compared to 40% of those people aged 35 to 54 and 50% of those who are 55 and older. Now, the numbers have changed. Back in 2013, when they did this poll before, 85% of those 18 to 29 said that they were extremely or very proud to be an American. 85%. Now that number is down to 39%, which is amazing, or 18%. So here we go. Now, party identification is also at play here. They say that Republicans are definitely more likely to be patriotic than Democrats. Extremely proud to be an American stands at 60% for Republicans, 33% for independents, and only 29% for Democrats. Isn't that insane? Republicans are associated with greater national pride. They tend to be older, by the way, than Democrats and independents. So they say it could be an age thing, but I don't think that's it. I actually think that the Democrat Party, and I'm interested to know what you think about this, Katie, has almost vilified the term patriot. Patriot has become kind of a positive in Republican spheres, and in Democrat circles, they look at that as a negative.
I think that's a great point, but I think there's this other thing going on, and I take this perspective, of course, shaped partly by all the research I did for the book. The Marxist ideology that has, been here for a long time, and people who have tried to introduce Marxism or socialism in this country, part of what they're doing is, right, they want to tear down the free market system, the freedoms that we have. And so, a big part of their effort is to come in and be anti-American. I mean, I think about just the unbelievable tone of the Port Huron statement. That was the statement that was issued by those college students, very privileged college students, back in about 1960, 61, at the founding of Students for a Democratic Society. They had already such a disdain for this country, such a sort of privileged disdain. And I just think for whatever reason, that has been embraced by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has become the party of the radical progressives. The Marxists have found a home in the Democratic Party. And so, I think it's really important to point out this is not the Democratic Party of JFK Jr., and it's not even the party of Bill Clinton. The Democrat Party today is a very different party. And the fact that it is riddled with people who are not proud to be American, and I dare say even hate America, just does not surprise me at all.
It makes me really sad, though, because I really believe our country, and I say this one a lot, but, a lot of times young people, Democrats, they believe that America is the problem and not the solution. And I say, yes, the bad stuff that has happened in our country is because of people and leadership and ideas that were not good ideas, but our country represents what is right about everything. I mean, our country represents what is right. And so I really think that if you believe America is the solution and not the problem, you probably tend to be a Republican. And if not, you tend to be a Democrat. You want to blame America for all the bad stuff because you are in the party that wants to change everything, that does have this embrace of Marxism, as you said. And I think it's sad. I also think that we see younger people falling into the trap of not feeling patriotic because I think they're conditioned, number one, not to. I think they don't have civics. They don't have the education that we do. And I think they get very frustrated because they think there is not a way for them to make real change. When I was growing up, I would guess when you're growing up too, Katie, I was always told that if you didn't like something in our country, you could work to make a change. And that was the beauty of living here, is that we all had power as citizens in our country. And I'm not sure that young people feel that way. I'm not sure they're being taught that. And I actually feel like it's a bit, maybe it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but that's on purpose, because I think the elected officials who want to gain more power and money and control for themselves, they want us to forget that we're capable of making change.
Oh yeah, that's so true. And just the fact that so much of what now passes for civics is really all about teaching kids to be activists, and to be activists for leftist causes. So let's talk about solutions, because you and I we love solutions. We are both, I don't know why, but we're both optimists,
I know,
which is actually kind of great. I mean, I love not despairing.
Otherwise, our podcast would be called Sad Women, and that
wouldn't be otherwise exactly. And who wants to listen to that? Well, I will say, this is very personal for me because I actually grew up as one of those kind of disgruntled, not too patriotic kids. I can't tell you why. I mean, I grew up during the 60s. Oh, maybe that's why.
That's
right. Yeah. So I reached the age of 29 and I definitely would not have called myself a patriot. And the Berlin Wall fell that year, and I started traveling to Eastern Europe to do research, met my husband, and then ended up living there for another 12 years. And that was really my awakening. So I've really gone through a transformation in my own life of learning to love the country. And I'll tell you some of the things along the way that have been really helpful to me. So first of all, go live in a former communist country. Nothing will teach you to love America more. And honestly, if I were president of the United States, I would start a new program, not the Peace Corps, but something else, the Freedom Corps. And what you do is you send young people to countries like Yemen and Venezuela and Cuba, and let them live with a little oppression and totalitarianism, and see if that doesn't make them love our country in a new way. But in all seriousness, let me say another thing that I think is actually a super great exercise. And I think this is a cool thing even for kids to do, is learn more about your own family's story. When I moved back from Central and Eastern Europe, my brother hired me to write a history of our family company. We had a family company. My brother was the 7th generation president of this company, and he wanted the history written. And nothing opened my eyes more to the beauty of our country's history than looking at it through that particular lens. And, for so many people, I would venture to say almost everybody who's come to this country, everybody has a story in their past of ancestors, whether it was your own mother or father, or whether it was going back 10 generations. There is somebody who came here because they wanted either freedom or opportunity. And so learning your own family story, I think, is an incredibly beautiful way to learn about the country's history and to understand better what was the appeal of the United States.
I agree with you. I've done a little bit of that work, trying to track my family and knowing why they came here and the perseverance that it took to grow into. You kind of just watch the lineage, and the lineage really gets stronger and stronger and stronger as you see how people have embraced the success that America can bring. And I think that what really does make us different than any other country. And my dad's family came here from the Czech Republic, that time Czechoslovakia, escaping communism, and set up in a place where a lot of Czechs went, and that was Chicago. And outside of Chicago, in Fox River Grove, they started farming. My grandfather, his father had a cigar and ice cream shop on the south side of Chicago. But you see how people came here, and you think about that opportunity when his father came here. They had nothing, but they were able to build a business and they were able to start establishing themselves. And I think seeing that really does show you why people look to America for hope. And that hope is still here. We just have to find it and continue to give it life, because we really do have so many incredible opportunities before us.
All right, so let's talk about some of our favorite resources. Books and reading have been an incredibly important part of my education. Look, the bottom line is, first of all, I don't even think civics is hardly taught anymore. And even to those of us who still got the benefit of some civics and history education, it was a long time ago. And I don't know about you, but I do not remember. I don't remember a whole lot about what I learned in 6th grade or even 12th grade. So I find it's really fun to go back as an adult and learn about our history. So I want to talk about, I'm going to just show you a couple of my favorite books. So
I'm so excited because I want to write these down.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's see what you got.
Here comes my first favorite. So this book is called Freedom: The Enduring Importance of the American Revolution. This is a new book. It is absolutely gorgeous. The pictures, the illustrations are incredible. This is written by Jack Warren Jr., who was the executive director of the American Revolution Institute.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful book. It's a very readable book, and I love it. So I recommend that one. Another writer that I got to know is somebody I also really love. I like this book because it's a short book. It's an easy book to read, very readable again. So this one is by an author named Lucas Morel. And it's called Lincoln and the American Founding.
Love it.
Yeah. Again, I think he is a really great scholar, and I really like that. And then, this was so hard. It was so hard to narrow this down to just a few, but I'm going to mention one more. So there's an author named Amity Shlaes, and the first book of hers that I read was called The Forgotten Man, and it was sort of a new history of the Great Depression, which really made a very powerful case that the Depression was in fact prolonged by the interventionist policies of the government. Everybody thinks Franklin D. Roosevelt was the great savior. No, he really meddled in the economy and made the Depression worse than it needed to be. She's got another one along a similar vein called Great Society: A New History. I think I would recommend that as a third book. Now, these are just a handful, but I think that we're all at the point where if we want to be able to defend what we have to be prepared, we have to be educated, we have to be able to make the arguments. And so reading, I think, has to be an important part of our activism.
I agree. And I would add to the list, I think travel is also really, really, really important, because I think connecting with places and connecting with things in person where battles were fought, where people made incredibly important decisions for our country, I think there is nothing like that. It was a really big gift that my parents, I think, gave to me. And that is, and I know it seems hard sometimes, maybe if you've got little ones and you go, how do we figure this out? We never spent a lot of money, but we would do these road trips, or we would go and, we would go to all of the places where you would think about going. And I really think that's incredibly important for adults and for kids. My grandfather, the one I just mentioned in our last podcast, was a huge Civil War buff. And so he read everything, and seeing Gettysburg and seeing all of that through his eyes was incredibly powerful and emotional. So if you have the opportunity, I think not only is it important for kids to get a really good handle on things, but do that kind of stuff. And as you mentioned, traveling outside the country also gives you great respect for what we have in the United States, because there is no better country on the planet when you start to travel around. But I think even take into account, try to create those summer trips to American landmarks, to places that are important. I love, as much as Boston is liberal and crazy, I love going to Boston. I love all of that, to see the history that's there, to see the history that is Gettysburg, to see the places in upstate New York. I mean, all over the place. There are a million places, probably even in your own neck of the woods that you can connect with and learn about. There's something about being there that I think is incredibly impactful.
And I live right here in Washington, D.C.
You're lucky. Virginia's huge, and
I
Washington,
know.
D.C., of course.
And I have to say, this last Saturday night, when we were in the middle of a very intense heat wave, like 100 degrees for 3 days in a row, but Sebastian and I decided to go to the Lincoln Memorial. We had not been in ages. And so that, to me, that is one of the most awesome places to go.
Amazing.
Now, let's talk about the fact that we have something really important coming up in just a couple of years, which is America's semi-quincentennial.
Yeah.
Say that 3 times fast.
Hard.
America 250 is going to be a really important celebration. A lot of people may not remember, but celebrating the bicentennial in 1976 was the last time we got to do a big sort of celebration like this. There's just a lot of opportunities that I don't know if people are hearing about it much, but there is a huge operation to prepare for this celebration. And I know that they really want it to be engaging Americans at all levels and engaging a lot of the local historical institutions. So I commend people, go onto the website, america250.org, see what's being planned, get involved. And I'm going to say this. And I was going to sort of issue this warning before when you were talking about the importance of traveling.
Yeah.
We have one small problem today, which is, it's actually a big problem, which
revisionist.
Well, exactly. So a lot of our cultural institutions, a lot of our historical institutions are suffering from the same crisis of wokeness that we're seeing everywhere. And so you've got to go in with a grain of salt. But I will say, I think it's really important as well that American conservative voices, people who love this country, are very well represented in the America 250 celebrations. So I really encourage patriots to get involved, because I'm telling you, the radical left is trying to own that, and we need to push back on that.
I think it's a great warning. And it's one, what I would actually add the caveat to travel is to also do your own research and education as you go too, because you do have a lot of landmarks that have been corrupted in many different ways. So it is important to make sure you do that. And it's the same thing with the celebration of our country. You want to make sure that you're actually getting the right information. You have to be your own. You have to research it yourself almost, which is very sad, but it is the case. And we're all about personal responsibility here. So there you go.
So let's talk about our children. I mean, I think it's not only important that we educate ourselves, but we have to educate our children. I do not think that, especially if our kids are in public schools, I think we cannot rely on our schools to be teaching a love of country, or honestly, even to be teaching an honest history. So the good news is there are some great resources out there. Again, I think the number one best resource, I think, for young people is the new American history, which is called Land of Hope by Wilfred McClay. And the great thing is, so this is not the kind of book that a kid is going to sit down and read, but this is a great book to advocate for getting it into the schools. Very, very exciting. Now, there are a few other things. Ben Carson, surprisingly, started an initiative to teach kids history, which I love.
I love
So
it.
this is really geared
Yeah,
toward young kids. It's called Star Spangled Adventures, and these are really fun little short films that are geared toward young kids. So I love that. And then I'll just mention one more, which is the organization Constituting America. So this is an
Mhm.
organization, does a great job of being bipartisan, but they go into the schools and teach about the American Constitution. Check out their
I love
website,
that.
Constituting America.
And I'll add one more just in that same vein, and that is PragerU Kids is absolutely fantastic. So PragerU, does great videos for college age students, which is perfect. But if you're looking for kids, I actually had a friend of mine whose daughter just got picked to be in a PragerU Kids video. It was the cutest thing. And they do such a great job. First of all, you can feel safe that you're not going to get any kind of weird woke programming. And then you would also find that there's a lot of love of country and patriotism that's taught. So PragerU Kids, I have to give Dennis a shout out. He's just down the hall from me as we record this podcast today, and he does a great job with PragerU. But I spend a lot of time I'm very lucky in California. We have two beautiful presidential libraries. We have the Reagan Library, which is probably the most beautiful presidential library I've ever seen. It's got the Air Force One pavilion, so you can actually walk on the plane. Well, I'll tell you one of the coolest things, Katie, for me about the Reagan Library. First of all, I go there a lot, so I love it. But I hosted an event for your husband, for Seb, a few years ago and got to go on Air Force One with my co-host and with Sebastian and just with a docent who took us through. And what was so cool was listening to Seb tell me, okay, here's what it's like on Air Force One now compared to the Air Force One that Ronald Reagan tooled around. And I thought that was incredibly interesting because most of us don't get the opportunity to be on Air Force One. So it was kind of neat to hear the comparisons, but it's an incredible library. The Nixon Library is also in California, in Yorba Linda, and it's incredibly beautiful as well. In fact, I'm telling you, you could get married at this place. I mean, it's just stunning. They have an exact replica of the East Room. They have the Marine One. They have the helicopter there. They also have the birthplace of Richard Nixon, which is really beautiful on property and just tiny little house. It's incredible, a beautiful rose garden. But what's incredible about the Nixon Library is that they really are trying to up civic engagement because they know the problems that exist in our schools and the frustration that comes in young people when they feel like they can't make change. And I think we saw that with the Black Lives Matter riots, and we see it with the protests. It's just a lot of anger, but not a lot of control as to how to actually make change. Now, they're doing a program where they're actually bringing kids. They're doing elementary, middle, and high school, but they say they'd like to focus particularly on middle and high school moving forward. But they are included some test runs with elementary schools. And they're bringing kids into the Nixon Library to have them learn about civics with the backdrop of the East Room. The backdrop, they have a replica Oval Office. There's also a Situation Room. So they can actually learn about civics in these replicas of what real presidents are sitting in and having these discussions. And I think that's so cool and incredibly important, especially for local schools, but they're even trying to make this bigger and create a nationwide platform of civic programming based on principles from the library that they're going to try to roll out, not just in California, but around the country. And I think that's a really neat thing. And it's nonpartisan because they know they'll scare away schools if they call it a partisan program, of course, but they want to bring it in kind of curriculum accessible for kids. And I think it's a fabulous idea.
So now, do you have 4th of July memories from your childhood?
4th of July has always been really fun for me. So I live in a pretty small suburb of Los Angeles, and every year there was a 4th of July parade, which was completely lame, but it was always, I mean, there was like 4 people in it, but on a Girl Scout troop or something, but that was always a really fun thing. I remember one year with my dad's business, I actually got to ride in that parade. So that was always fun. Of course, I love anything sparkly. So fireworks, always very fun for me. But I think about this time of year, this is when I start bringing out my patriotic music. Like I'm a country music lover anyway. So a lot of the American songs come out. I just love that. I know President Trump has kind of made it into his theme song, but God Bless the USA, they played it a lot after 9/11. And I can remember sitting in my car after 9/11, just sobbing, listening to this song. And I think 9/11 for me, just looking back, is when I got very serious about celebrating America and the patriotism that I had in my heart. I was always patriotic. We always had positive messages. I was very lucky with my family. Even my mom, who's a liberal, my dad, who was a conservative, like they shared that commonality of loving our country, and they passed it on to me. But 9/11 for me was the moment where I thought, this is at risk. If we don't fight to save it, we have to do more. And so as a young 20 something, I think that was the moment where I really started to take it seriously and start to really appreciate and learn how to fight to keep the country going, because this is not a given. It's not a forever. And we have to fight to protect our republic. And it's a great idea. A republic's great if we can keep it, right? The old saying. I think it's just, that was the moment for me. And so this time of year, I'm always reminded and resolute in my cause. And I think every day for me is the 4th of July, because I really do love celebrating where we live. It's the greatest place on earth. How about you? Growing up, what was the 4th of July like?
So I really only remember vividly one 4th of July parade, and I was probably 5 or 6. And I just remember, I think I even still had training wheels.
I might still have training wheels, whatever.
But I remember the streamers woven through the spokes of my bicycle. That's what I remember.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. But I think more recently, best 4th of July ever was probably the one I got to celebrate from the lawn of the White House during the Trump administration. And I just got to tell you, any event at the White House during the Trump administration, and these were not intimate affairs, okay? Yeah. I will just tell you, they would pile thousands of people onto the lawn, but you have never been in the midst of a happier group. So it was just so fun, so celebratory. But then I went through several years not wanting to fight the crowds of July 4th in Washington, D.C. And last year we had some good friends in town who you will meet on the cruise. They will be with us on the cruise. And so we met them in D.C. for dinner, and we walked down to the mall for the fireworks.
I remember you said you went there last year.
I loved it. Okay, I could have done without the clouds of pot smoke, but aside from that, it was so fun to see all these people, all kinds of people there watching the fireworks and just, being together. It was just a really fun experience. So those are two of my more recent.
I love it. I love it. And I hope whatever you all have planned for the 4th of July, you remember to just take a little bit of that patriotism with you. And, I say it all the time, when you want to make real change, just talk to people about how great our country is, because that is the best thing that we can do, is be little walking billboards to try to change people's hearts and their minds. And hopefully next time Gallup does a survey about patriotism, we're not going to be hanging out in the 30s and the 40s and the 18s. Let's have it at 100%, because we should all be feeling pretty patriotic around here. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I want to remind you to get Katie's book, Next Gen Marxism, wherever you get your books. You should check out her website as well, katiegorka.org. You can find me on social media, Jennifer Horn Radio on Facebook and Instagram, and you can find me on X and on Truth at Jennifer Horn. Subscribe, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate all of that, and share Happy Women with your friends. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the Happy Women Podcast.